ex-convict, not being in my daughter's life, really, my girlfriend breaking up with me $200,000 in debt, me living in my car for 2.5 years, sleeping on bubble wrap, sleeping in an abandoned building, sleeping in my storage unit, and trying to figure out how I can have this much talent and all of these people are moving ahead of me.
Hello, you beautiful Blu Birds, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Blu. This is your girl Blu here, and I am currently sitting with Garrain Jones. Not only is Garrain Jones has shown up in my life in a miraculous way. I feel like I can see your rhetorical cape as you walk into a space. You are a living superhero. And
I love that. Say it again.
You are a living superhero, Garen.
Oh, the little 5-year-old is saying, oh, yes, get in that heart.
I've also incorporated that into like how I receive love now.
Yeah.
I visualize that there's like a little pocket on my heart. And whenever anybody shares a nice reflection, I go, and I put it into that little pocket in my heart and just save it for later. So thanks for that being one of many things that you have brought into my life that I have incorporated as a new clean lens of how I receive my reality. Garen is not only a best-selling author of
Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life.
Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life. I haven't actually read it yet, but I do have a copy, so I'm about to dive into it.
Perfect.
And I see that is sort of going all around the world right now, and lots of people are diving into that. You are also a
fly batter.
fly basher and a transformational storyteller.
Yeah.
So you travel, or you did pre-COVID, traveled all around the world, telling stories on stages in front of thousands of people.
Yep.
Telling your story, which we're going to do today. We're going to dive into it.
Telling stories, telling my stories, telling other people's stories. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And something that I actually realized last night, or I've sort of noticed since I've met you and been around you when you share a story, is that yes, it's your own unique story, and simultaneously, it gives a permission slip for the people listening to the story, because it's a recognition of, wow, you've activated this awareness in your life, and through you telling your story, it's a permission slip for me to be able to actually say, I can do that too. I can activate that within my own life. And it's a very relatable experience, even though it is uniquely your own and the way that you just share it. So I just feel like you light up every space that you're in. You are a light. Our brother Brandon Collingsworth, we were just talking about him. He's like, Garrain Jones is a light. And you enter into a space and you just up the vibe. And I've noticed on your Instagram stories, actually, you will be somewhere like getting an acai bowl. Yeah. And you like got your phone out and you're like, yeah, I'm in the acai place. And this is the woman serving me. And hey, how you doing? And you're like, everybody's smiling and you've activated people. And it's just like an unapologetic, childlike innocence, yet deep elder wisdom that you carry. And I'm just excited to pick your brain today on Deja Blu. Also, this isn't the first time that we've tried this.
We went through a whole run through that was supposed to be the real thing, and
we had an audio technical difficulty, and I was sitting in my room going through all the audio after we did the podcast, and realized that the audio didn't work. And so
which set up time for us to connect even more, to come back, dive deeper, and now it's going to be perfect. It was perfect before, but there's another level to the perfect.
100%. And this time round, we've also got Chelsea and Andre behind the scenes supporting with the cameras and the lighting. And so we've up-leveled exponentially with our equipment.
And you're in a new place, like all kind of stuff.
And we're in the new house, and we've deepened our relationship since then. So even in the moments where the mind wants to think that this is something that's gone wrong or this is an error, there's always a gift on the other side of it. And here we are coming back stronger, more aligned, with a deeper connection.
Absolutely.
Ready to dive in today.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Garen, you are a fascinating individual with a fascinating story. Mm-hmm. Where you're at right now, I can understand from the outside perspective, if we just look at the chapter in your movie that you're in right now, or the chapter of your book that you're in right now, how can people relate to what you're doing, calling in multi-million dollars, living in a dream home, having a beautiful relationship with your wife, sharing a message that is in alignment with your dharma, feeling a deep sense of purpose, feeling activated, feeling joy on a daily basis. This is a place where most people will not be able to relate to. And yet simultaneously, your story is a place where most will be able to relate to. So I'd like to just sort of regress a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have anything else to say?
No, go for it.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, most people don't really know what they want. They say, I want this, but then you find their energies here and here and here and here and here. And it's like you can't hit a target that you don't have. My whole life, I've always known I wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to be stronger than the average man. I wanted to have abs like an action figure and save and change lives all over the world. I didn't know that I called this life into existence when I was 5 years old. So as we're reeling it back, you see the life now, but I asked for that life. And when I was little, you know, my mom, my family didn't come from money. My father was murdered when I was 12 years old. My brother, let's just say he became my loving brother after I graduated and moved on and learned more about myself. So he pretty much like picked on me and bullied me growing up. And so I grew up being bullied, hanging out with kids who got in trouble all the time. So I was in and out of juvenile. And I'd say this, there were a few things in my early years that were a huge part of just philosophies that I live by now, but I didn't know that. So one, my mom, whenever I would ask for, I'd be like, Mom, can you buy me this? My mom would give me this look like, we don't have no money. We don't have no money, but whenever you can make your own money, you can buy whatever you want. But I was never taught how to make the money. I was never taught integrity. I was never taught any of these things. So I would just go and fearlessly go. I would like either break into cars or have a lemonade stand or like steal blow pops from a store and sell them for $1. So I had this relentless pursuit to put myself out there. Even found myself in a lake called Alligator Island because no other kids would jump in that lake because of the alligators, and that's where all the golf balls were. And I would sell golf balls for $1. I was the one who made all the money because I was the only one who was willing to go up against the alligators. Now, take that resilience, that fearlessness, and the ability to go and create ways to make money, but from the age of 5, 6, and 7, you know, I'm going to be 42 in July. So have that same mentality, but I also was never, I didn't grow up around a community of people that says, hey, don't do that, don't do this. I was the weird guy. I was known as the weird guy who thought about stars and maybe we're not the only ones here. At age 7, where everybody else was watching cartoons, I was just like, I just know that there's more out there. There's no way. So I was deemed the weirdo. The only people who hung out with those kind of people, consider myself, were the people who got in trouble all the time, the outcasts, and the people who were drinking and doing drugs and things like that. Though I never did any of those things, those were the people who brought me in. By nature, just by way of community, I did everything that I saw them doing. So I was breaking into cars, I was running with gangs. I was never in a gang, but I was running with them, getting into fights and doing all kind of crazy stuff. I never learned the lesson. So imagine I'm a little kid and I carry that mentality on. And if you know how language works, you learn ABCs, that turns into words, turns into sentences, turns into paragraphs, essays, books. So my language of just no discipline, the ABC version of no discipline, carrying on just like language, you do 20 more years of that, you see what the manifestation of that was. So that turned into me being in prison for 2.5 years, serving a 12-year sentence, me living in my car for 2.5 years, me just just like disrespecting women. I never, not physically, but just like I just never had any respect for women. Not my mom, not my cousins. I wasn't there for my daughter. So I never had, you can't change what you're not aware of. So I never had, I don't want to say access. I just never had a chance to, I wasn't willing to go and seek mentors or seek any ways that I can get out of the current mindset of having no direction in life. That led me to 2011, ex-convict, not being in my daughter's life really, my girlfriend breaking up with me $200,000 in debt, me living in my car for 2.5 years, sleeping on bubble wrap, sleeping in an abandoned building, sleeping in my storage unit, and trying to figure out how I can have this much talent and all of these people are moving ahead of me. And that's when I hit my rock bottom in 2011. Mind you, I carried this my entire life. So in 2011 is when it was 3:43 in the morning and I just cried out. And I was like, okay, I'm tired of fighting. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be surrounded by nothing but positive people. I want to make a bunch of money, but I want the money to represent something that I passionately believe in that I would do for free. Week later, I'm at the gas station and I meet a homeless guy who asked me for money. And I say, you have more money than me. And he says, change your mindset, change your life. And it was in that moment, everything that I'd ever overcome in my life, it felt like it was all a lie. Because in that moment, I realized maybe I can do the opposite of everything that I normally do. Well, it's been 9 years. And on the other side of everything I wouldn't normally do in areas of my life I wasn't happy, I learned and trained myself how to, and that was the door to more that led me to this life now, because that was reading books, going to seminars, changing my eating habits, waking up early, not hanging around with my old friends and getting around a new cute community, getting healthy was all the opposite of everything I would normally do. Mm-hmm. And now we're here. Mm-hmm. Mm. I know it's a lot to unpack.
There's so much there.
There's so much to unpack.
Can you break down, there's something that you said about you were sentenced to 12 years in prison. You served 2.
2.5, yeah.
What shifted that? What you went to prison? Can you unpack that part of your life a little bit?
Yeah, so I got caught trying to smuggle 6.2 kilos of heroin into the country. I was in France and I was trying to get into the UK, working with some other people, for some other people. And I got caught. And in my mind, I thought my life was over. Everything was over. Mind you, when I went into prison, I had billboards in Times Square. Because I was a model and I did so many Gap, Old Navy, Tommy Hilfiger, music videos. Like I was the guy that you would walk into the mall and you see him in 8 different stores with national commercials and everything. I never learned a way to make money that was conducive to my growth. I would just do any other way to make money. So even if I had money, even taking this opportunity, I just never knew. And I had no remorse on what would happen if, because I've always been fearless. So here I am, I get caught. I'm never thinking I'm going to get out. So about a year, I'd say 1.5 years in, they allowed us to watch movies once a month, and Shawshank Redemption came on.
Which sort of blows my mind a little bit because it's all about breaking out of prison.
Yeah.
They like give you this movie to watch while you're in prison. And like,
Absolutely.
hey, there's a 3-hour-long movie about how to escape.
Yeah. And so Tim Robbins says, he was the main character, and he says, when they had locked him up, they said, they can take anything they want away from me, but they can't take away my mind. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I had a massive epiphany. And of course, I'm telling you this as I connect the dots looking back on my life. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew that I was thinking different back then. And I said, oh my God, well, then I'm free. In that moment, I knew exactly why I was in prison. Because while I was so-called free on the outside, I used to always say, I feel like I'm so far away from where I'm supposed to be. I feel like I'm in prison inside of my own body. And guess what? I was so far away in France from where I was supposed to be, in prison. And I said, if I could put myself in prison, can I take myself out of prison with the same way? So in losing myself, I found myself. In being on lockdown, I actually discovered my freedom. And in that moment, I said, what will I do in here that I wouldn't normally do out there? What can I do? And I started asking myself different questions. All right, man, I'm going to learn to speak fluent French.
Oh, you did?
And I did. And I'm going to stop using my dominant hand, and I'm going to start using my non-dominant hand, what I now know is operating a different part of my brain. And I did for 2 years. So if you just literally stop and use your dominant hand for everything that you do, your non-dominant hand for everything you do, 30 days, your life will be massively transformed because you'll be building the muscle of adaptation. I didn't know that. I was just trying to distract myself and do different things. And then also, and I was like, man, so what does freedom look like for me? And I asked that question. I was like, well, I'm going to start doing everything that I love. I forgot that I love to draw. So I remembered to draw. Then one of the inmates says, man, can you do this, a picture of my family? And then when I did that portrait, when I drew that portrait of that inmate's family, other inmates was like, man, can you do? And I was just, it was so awesome bringing something that I love to do and then giving it to somebody else, and it was bringing joy to their lives. Simultaneously, I remembered that I loved to sing, and I had stopped singing before that. It's like I gave up on a dream. And then while I was singing, one of the inmates says, man, every time you sing, it makes me feel free. So I started singing every night and bringing joy to somebody else's life. Simultaneously, they have this thing called prom night, which is like the America's version of the yard. There's fights, there's stabbings, there's drug deals, and they lift weights and things like that, but nobody was running. And I had this little voice inside that says, Garen, you love to run. Why don't you run? And nobody else is running. So here's what I got that. My freedom is honoring everything that's always been in my heart, because that's the truest. I was born into it. So one day I just started running. And within 30 days, there were 62 inmates. That was 60-something inmates that were running with me. And while that was happening, it was a much more enjoyable space. There was less fights, less drug deals. And I remember the guard had brought me into the office and said, man, ever since you've been running, we said it in French, ever since you've been running, it's like been less fights and things like that. Keep doing what you're doing. I felt so free because I was honoring everything that was inside. Like I wasn't out there looking for freedom or looking for success. Everything that, and mind you, I'm only sharing with you this as I connect the dots looking backwards. Everything was already inside of me. And I needed to be still long enough and have all my distractions moved away. And so maybe going to prison far away so I'm not used to anything, only for everything to be taken away or removed so that I could be reminded of how to be with myself, because most people don't know how to be with themselves, which is why they get caught up in all the distractions. But I learned how to be with myself and honor everything that was in my heart. I feel that the value that was building up inside of me, kind of like pouring water into a cup, had reached the tipping point, and then you pour another drop, it starts to flow into the next container. So I was building up so much value into my own physical container that it started to spill over into the next container called prison. and people were benefiting from the overflow that I first gave to myself. And that was too big for the prison, that it needed to overflow into the next container, which I feel was called freedom, to the point where they brought me in to the office and said, we retested the drugs. I didn't even know why they did, because they'd already tested them 3 times. I'm 2 years into my sentence, and they retested the drugs again when I felt free. When I felt free, and I was embodying and I'm going to say this word again. I was embodying the characteristics of freedom, not just the words. Like my actions, my thoughts, my energy, everything said free. And they said the drugs were fake. Well, 90% of it. But for the amount that was real, you've already done the time. You're free to go home.
So,
yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, I'm getting all over body shivers of just the power of this story and the symbolic meaning behind all of this. What it feels like when I hear you share this is that you inner engineered your way out of prison, from your inner reality, from actually listening to the whispers of your own heart and finding freedom within a place where most would say that you have, from external circumstances, zero freedom. You found it in your own mind.
In losing my freedom, I discovered my freedom.
And also losing your freedom and placing you in that situation where you're sort of pushed into a corner to face off with yourself over and over and over again every single day. I can only imagine how slow time moves when you're in a space with zero distractions. And to actually face off with yourself over and over and over again, what actually it did is it feels like it closed the gap of the separation of between the version you were being and actually who you are.
Absolutely. And then one thing I want to preface is I actually gave up on time. Time no longer became my God, because in the space of the infinite, everything becomes possible. So I was just focused on possibility, and the time was whatever the time was. So because I gave up on the control of time, and I was just operating under the stimulus of building people up, bringing joy to other people, and honoring what was truly in my heart, it was as if the universe became plastic and was shaping according to the thoughts that I gave the most power to. See, before, I was giving everybody outside of me powers. I was giving labels powers. I was giving all kind of things. It was like what church I went to power, this, what kind of food I was eating, that came with a title. It was all these different labels that I gave power, and the only person I never really honored was myself. So when I actually, not from a vain sense, when I truly honored what was in my heart, everything had to match. Whatever the health of the seed determines the growth of the tree and the fruit that it produces. And the best way that I can relatably share this, you see a woman who's pregnant, and there's like the sperm, the one or two triplets who make it or whatever, then the baby starts to grow in the womb. When it becomes too big for the womb, what once grew on the inside is now produced on the outside. Well, let's just consider that prison was a version of a womb for me. And I was a fetus inside a prison. And when I grew too big for my own body, it was no different than the baby, the fetus, actually growing and growing and growing. But I feel the value that I was creating was too big for my body and too big for the space that I was in. So what was once produced on the inside gave birth to a free Garen. Resurrected a free Garen. The next realm of free Garen, whatever label you want to put on it, it's ultimately the same thing. So, that's the best way that I can describe my personal experience. That has been on everything that I've ever created, there was a formulation of that story. Whether I was in a relationship that I knew I didn't want to be in, and I stayed in it for, ironically, my longest relationships before me and my wife was 2.5 years. Funny, I was in prison for 2.5 years, and I lived in my car for 2.5 years. So there was already a 2.5 year cycle. All my relationships, the longest ones were, several of them were 2.5 years. I'm like, oh, okay. So this could either be a prison or an incubation for growth. Now I choose the incubation for growth.
So I can see now why that you created your title of your book, Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life.
Yeah.
Because you are shifting consciously the inner workings, and therefore, as within, so without, you're shifting external reality. And so I'm curious, a lot of questions I get online
Okay.
is, so it feels like, sort of backtracking, it feels like you've gone through this incubator, you've come out of prison.
Yep.
Now it almost feels like you're at zero. Like, it's like, as opposed to in the negative of like having no freedom in your external reality. Now you've come out. Now you're sort of at zero, at a blank slate.
Yep.
So how does one move from going through this profound sort of, I'd like to say, awakening of one's true self,
Yep.
to then come out of prison, then start from zero and move from zero to where you're at right now, specifically speaking around the financial piece?
Yeah. So one, you never start from zero. You start from experience. If you choose to get the lesson. Most people never get they don't ever really grasp the lesson that they're like, I'm gonna learn all these other lessons, but this one, I'm gonna keep this one. You don't leave the past in the past, because your future will be a recreation of your past. So when I got out, I was like, why do I keep ending up in the same, why do I keep feeling like this? So when you think about school, at the end of the year, there's a final exam. If you pass it, you go to the next grade. If you fail it, you stay in the next grade and you take the same test over again, whatever. So if you take that same philosophy and put it towards life, so if the same thing keeps happening every year around the same time, you keep dating the same kind of guy, same kind of girl, this same thing happening, why do I keep, then there just might be that you keep failing the same test. And most people go through their entire life not realizing what their tests are. And so when I got out, I started asking, why do I keep finding myself in the same position? There's got to be something. What am I supposed to be learning in all this? I'm asking different questions. Not like, why is this happening to me still? It's like pitiful me. I started asking different questions. So there was 10 years where nothing was happening. So I get out. And I go from couch to girl's house to couch to trying to figure it out in Hollywood, having all this talent, watching people just thrive. I'm like, yo, man, how are people doing that? Like, I have no idea. And I know I have so much to give to the world. But And so it wasn't until I was around a community of people who were goal-driven, I found, because this was the opposite. I went to a free success training seminar. Well, I'd never been to anything like that, so I'd never heard anything like that. Very spotty, but I just like, oh yeah, you're just lucky. But when I'm in an environment where there's like 1,200 people there, and then all these people, they're like dressed for success, and they're speaking a certain way, and they're acknowledging other a certain way, and somebody is on stage, and it's like, when you find a really good book, you keep reading it, because when you stop reading, the weeds of your mind, of your past start creeping up. And I was like, oh, anytime I read a book, I would just stop and think, I got it. So I got out in 2005. It wasn't until 2011 where I found myself in a new community. And my next big thing was leaders are learners, community matters, health matters, and you find a good book, keep reading it. And so I just kept reading the book, and I just kept reading. And anytime, I never read from memory. I used to read from memory so I can sound good. And what I've learned is if you don't know how to translate it to the people, it doesn't matter what's coming out of your mouth. You've got to know how to translate it to the people. Well, most people don't think up here. You got to meet them where they are. You got to give the baby ABCs, not pre-calculus. All right. So I keep reading the book. But when you read the book for mastery, it's very different when you read it for memory. So when I read a book, I would read it 50 times over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Well, one of the books was The Power of Positive Thinking, which I've read over 300 times. They're like, why do you keep reading it? I was like, well, it's not the same me that's reading the book. Right. Because when you do something over and over and over, it now becomes a part of you. And when it becomes a part of you, it's your way of being. Well, if I take a new perspective in and read the same book, it's a different me that's reading the book. And the book doesn't have the power. The book is reminding me of something that I get to discover in myself. So because I was seeking counsel and I was seeking inner wisdom and I took the same energy that I did when I was breaking into cars or doing all the, and I was like, oh, what would happen if I went all in on becoming a better version of myself? Well, I was directly surrounded around a bunch of people that would respond differently every time I would have a new awareness and apply myself different in my own life. And I'm like, oh, every time I do this, there's instant gratification. There's instant response without me having to say anything. So I had direct feedback. So I just got really happy about personal growth and learning how to translate it to people. Because I would learn these big words, but I want to say big words to somebody who's never picked up a book. It went right over their head. So I found a bunch of people who were just inspired by me. But then when I spoke practically, all of a sudden, everything opened up. When one person heard my story and said, I put the gun down when you shared your testimony. And someone else 5 minutes later said, I didn't drive my car off a bridge when you shared your story. I knew in that moment why I was here and why I went through everything that I went through. And that's when I truly discovered I'm a freaking superhero. This is what I'm here to save and change people's lives, be stronger than the average man. This is what I do. You can give me any platform, same message. And that's how it turned into that, is because I was so locked in on my message. That thing you can anywhere, it's the same outcome. I'm so clear and locked in on what I'm here to do. I'm not trying to discover it because it's already a part of me.
So essentially, it's like you went full circle.
Yes.
Because as a child, you were looking out into the stars.
Exactly.
And you were going, there's something more. And while everyone's watching cartoons, you're thinking about the infinite space in which we live in and how there's always got to be something more. There's got to be more life out there and just a natural curiosity. And yet life took you a couple of degrees out of alignment of who you truly authentically were.
Yeah.
Based off of a narrative of survival. And
what life did, I didn't mean to cut you off. What life did is it took me out of my comfort zone of what I thought life should look like because of the people around me and the childhood conditioning. So I had to break a wall that we inadvertently put up as a 5-year-old. Imagine if I told you unlearn English. That's what changing is like. So you can't just unlearn English, but you can learn a new language. So what life was trying to do was teach me a new language that was outside of my comfort zone that I'd already agreed upon at 6. And then once I got that, name one superhero that didn't have to overcome a lot to discover his or her powers, or whatever pronoun you choose, powers. I'm like, I'm a motherfucking superhero. So what people are seeing is me doing all these things with all this high level energy. It's little Garen, like real talk. It's little Garen that's doing what he's always wanted to do.
And come full circle.
Yeah.
It reminds me of an analogy I like to use where it's there's 2 fish in the fish tank, and one fish goes over to the other fish and is like, "Hey man, how's the water today?" And the other fish is like, "What water?" Because the fish has been in water its whole life. Now, here comes life. The hand goes into the fish tank and pulls out the fish that's been in water its whole life, that has no idea it's in water. And the fish looks down and goes, "Holy shit! I've been in water my whole life!"
Yes.
Then the hand places it back in. And now the fish knows how to navigate because he knows and understands what water is, and and there's less gravity in the water, and knows how to weave around and learns how to work with what has always been.
Yeah.
But when we've been in the shadow, in the moment, for example, we're born, we're given a name, we're given a title, we're given a social background, we're given all of these different labels. We become these versions of ourselves that we think will be accepted, we think is successful. It creates a couple of degrees out of alignment. You follow those few degrees out. It starts like this. You follow it out. Now we have 40 degrees out of alignment.
Yeah.
Something has to go, in goes the hand, gives the perspective shift so we can actually break out of our own pattern that is actually self-destructive. And that hand can come in many forms. That hand can come in the form of going to jail. That hand can come in the form of a car accident, or a really intense breakup, a challenging relationship. Or it can also come in the hand of psychedelics, or the Hoffman process, or certain things that actually create a pattern interrupt into our usual cycle so that we can see it from an
I call it a conscious interrupt.
100%. And then that conscious interrupt, the pattern interrupt that allows us to see what we're actually navigating in, the shadow, when we can actually see what the gift is on the other side of it, then we can actually change the pattern.
Yeah.
But if we can't see it with the same mentality that got us into it.
You can't change what you're not aware of.
100%. So in the moment when all of a sudden you're going to jail and you've got a 12-year sentence on your hands, that literally looks like this is the end of my life.
Yep.
And yet actually from a shifted perspective, it was the start of your life.
And it was also the end of my old life. So it was the start of a new perspective.
But a death had to happen.
But really, that was a straight up ego death. Before I didn't even know what that was because I wasn't aware. It's not, now that I do all this work, I can go and connect the dots. And I'm like, oh, because I didn't even know how I was able to get a lot of results before I even went to all the transformation courses and things. I'm like, I don't know, I just love people. And then once I went and did all this work and people are struggling to forgive their dad or their mom or something like that, or let go of this resentment, I was like, man, I made a list of 300 names from kindergarten all the way to present date, and I apologized to every single one of them. And I did that 5 years ago because I just felt like I was carrying this weight that no longer served my body, and I just let it go. That produced results, but I couldn't articulate it. So that's it. It's exactly what you're sharing, and it's it's an important conversation because no matter how much work you do, you'll never be able to outrun yourself and the work that you haven't done on the deeper levels. And if you don't even know those deeper levels exist, well, then you'll be a puppet master to those particular shadows your entire life, especially if you're trying to change it from the surface. That's why we're dealing with this crazy stuff in the media right now. Everybody's focused on the surface. I'll tell you, a few years ago, my face was the size of Thanos from Avengers, and I went to the dentist, and And he was like, you got to get a root canal. I said, how is that even possible? They said, well, I said, because 17 years ago, I had a root canal. They said, well, whoever originally did your root canal didn't get it all the way to the root. So you have 17 years worth of infection that is just now show up on the surface. And so when you tailor it back to life, if something deeply impacted you when you were 3, 4, and 5, and you like try to bury it, you may have 20 years worth of infection that you think it's your boyfriend or your husband or your kids. No, it's the little 4-year-old that never cleared that pattern. It's an open loop. So that forgiveness and that letting go of resentment allows you to actually process from the mind and perspective of the kid. And then you can create a new possibility from there, but not from the adult to the kid. It's from the kid to wherever you'd like to live your life, and the adult can actually follow that pattern.
And that's what I really loved in our conversation yesterday, was that when an emotion presents itself, the invitation that you present is, when was the earliest memory that you remember feeling this thing?
Yeah.
As opposed to looking at the surface level of external circumstances as to why I feel this way. The invitation is, when was the earliest memory that you remember? What was the earliest memory that you remember that was linked with this emotion? And can you regress into that and actually rewrite the narrative? And I think from that perspective, actually, time doesn't exist. We can collapse the timeline. It's non-linear.
Yeah.
To actually, with the awareness that we have now, revisit that moment, reintegrate it from an expanded sense of awareness into the wholeness of love, and then in this moment regain our power back.
Absolutely.
So it's not too late.
No, it's never too late, especially when time is not, like, as long as you have an attachment to time, it'll always be too late. However, if you actually focus on the space of the infinite, if you release time and then you focus on the possibility, just like you said, you compress time frames, and all of a sudden you're like, did you just get plastic surgery? Like, no, I just let go of some emotional baggage, and your soul can't hold that weight. So your spirit starts to sag. When you start letting that stuff go, then all of a sudden you feel younger, food tastes different. You start feeling lighter and not feeling the weight of these just old emotions just dragging you around. I've seen this stuff. I've seen it with my own life, where my own daughter was like, Dad, did you get like work done on your face? I'm like, no. Why'd you say that? But then when I did a photo shoot earlier this year and I compared it to me when I was 34 years old, it looked like the 34-year-old was 45 and the 41-year-old was 29. And I'm like, oh, it's because I released all that resentment. It's because I started doing what I loved again. Because I forget. And then I always got to keep remembering, do what you love. Do what makes you happy. Do what sets your soul on fire.
And it is the fountain of youth.
Absolutely. At 100%.
And because it's shining from inside out, it's such a sustainable resource. And I
mean,
feel
it's your
like
heart.
the skin gets clearer, and the teeth get whiter, and the eyes get clearer, and the health and the beauty actually is activated. And essentially, this is something that I really love to hold space within women, for women, is the shift from artificial glamour to authentic beauty. It's going from external things that get placed on to feel a sense of beauty, to actually shift the narrative to how much I care, how much compassion I have, how willing I am to face off with myself, how much I am in service, how much do I listen. This actually creates a very sustainable beauty that even when you're 70, 80 years old, there is a grace and an agelessness that is emanating because it's activated from within.
Yes, and I actually want to add on to that, because you had asked a question a few minutes ago about just transformation in regards to finances. And the second part of that was the self-love. Because when, somebody was like, oh, I'm having money problems, I was like, what kind of money problems are you really having? Because money is a piece of paper with perceived value. However, someone's got to give that value. What's your relationship to money? And then she told me, and then I said, now what's your relationship with yourself? And it was identical. Oh, her money was in direct correlation to her inner dialogue at the deepest level of herself. And I was like, if you understand how nature works, and this person was a huge fan of nature. Get this. This is the craziest thing. She's like, oh, I love the trees and I love going into nature and everything. I was like, how can you love the trees and money is made from trees and you have money problems, but you love nature? And she was like, I said, exactly. It's your relationship to yourself and the value that you put on that. But I guarantee you, if you put the same value that you did on the trees that you love so much on money, on your bills, on the IRS, on all this, just the circulation of money, but all of it is flowing to how you see yourself. But if you really relic inside of that, like you do those trees, you like went and hugged a tree, go hug $1 and say, I'm so grateful for you. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's made from trees. So that exchange of energy must flow like that. That's why it must come and it must go. And it's like, but it's like you see you see the leaves, you see the nature of the leaves. They go like this. The nature of the ocean and the water is going like this. Your breath is going like that. It's all signifying life. So the nature of money is supposed to go and come and go and come. But you can take a bigger breath and then you can acquire more. But it all is in relation to how you see yourself, how you acknowledge yourself, how you appreciate yourself. So could you then think more of yourself? And she was like, yes. Okay, so now practice that. I see more of myself. She's like, I don't believe it. I was like, yeah, because you've been telling yourself a different story. Now, tell yourself this. Oh, no. And she kept doing it. 30 days, she was like, I just got this random check out of nowhere. I was like, nothing's out of nowhere. It's responding to you. You take a snow globe and you don't shake it, it's not activated. When you take it and you go like this, all of a sudden these little particles out of nowhere, that's the checks out of nowhere. That's the people you meet out of nowhere because your life is activated. But you've activated your own life. You're not waiting for something out there to activate your life. And she was like, I am so worthy of all of this. I said, I know. Now tell that to your soul. Tell that to your face. Tell that to your money. Tell that to, make best friends with it, like you do the trees, and watch what happens. Shit.
You said something to me yesterday about money, and I'd love for you to repeat it if you can remember it. It's something along the lines of, I open myself up to receive as much value as I give.
Yeah. So there was, I've been fortunate to build an incredible life that has surpassed my wildest dreams, but it's like the bottom of my blessing. I know that there's so much more. And I remember my spiritual guide, Monica Zan, she came up to me. She was like, Garen, you're the most giving person I have ever met. You said yes. You say yes to everything. You always show up for people. She was like, have you ever thought to receive at the capacity that you give? And she told me to breathe out. And then she gave me this little bitty coffee straw. And she said, breathe in. And I couldn't do it. She was like, that's what you're doing to your life. She said, now imagine you receiving at the capacity that you give. She was like, if you can put a landmark on your level of giving. I said, the tallest mountain range, standing on the tallest mountain range, and I'm looking out at millions of people, and I'm just giving. She said, now be on that same mountain range and imagine yourself receiving at that capacity. And I was like, and I started crying. And then I was at an event the very next day, and it was a standing ovation, and this lady came up to me, and she was like, "You are so anointed." She was like, "I just need to sow something into you." And I saw this big wad of money, hundreds. And my first thing that I was thinking about, I was like, "No, I don't want your money." And then I thought about receive at the capacity that you give. Garen, it was a standing ovation, and people, there was some deep shadow work that just like, whoo, you could see it. Is that not worth what she's trying to sow into you when you did a free workshop, just giving? And I said, thank you so much. And in that moment, all my businesses catapulted ×3. Because I realized that I was underserving myself by not allowing other people to give, which allows me to receive. And that's the even keel of nature. Just like the leaves, just like breath, just like when you go to the hospital and the needle goes like that. It's all signifying life. It's a part of life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's something that really stands out to me with how you show up, is that you, no matter where you are at financially, no matter how many followers you have, no matter what you've achieved within the 3D realm, you say yes. And essentially, you're kind of like a yes man, like the most living form of the movie Yes Man that I've met. And
not from a weak place.
No, it comes from a place of empowerment, because when you show up, you're in your full fuck yes. You're not showing up from a place of compromise.
Yeah.
It's very energetically different. It's like, I'm a yes and I'm all in. And then when you come, you bring all of you. And therefore you receive all of you. And you continue to pick up connections, opportunities, resources because of how you're showing up and how you're in service. And something that I just find to be profoundly unique is that when people receive recognition, when people receive large amounts of finances, all of a sudden there is almost like an energetic pedestal that gets created where they are now not available as easily. You have to get through their assistant before you can talk to them. And I can understand there's a reason for that, because more people start coming into the field.
Oh yeah, especially when it's a lot more.
Right. And so, now that you have quite a large following online and there's more people in the field, I'm curious, how do you navigate? First and foremost, I'm curious, how do you navigate what you say yes to as a sort of an energetic yes man, while simultaneously honoring your energy and making sure that you are in alignment with not saying yes to compromise?
I don't say yes all hours of the day. Mm-hmm. So I control my schedule. So when I say yes, it's got to match my schedule. So I'm not going to do 5 podcasts in one day. We're going to schedule it out. Book this day, because I do just enough in a day so that I could bring my best self until it's time to go to bed. Because I still got to get to go home to my wife. So I don't want to bring that whack stuff to my wife when I gave everything else my energy and then I have nothing left for her. Mm-hmm. So it's important to me that I'm in control of my time. I'm in control of my schedule. So when I say yes, I give it to my assistant. And I said, but she already knows what I'm on. Find it somewhere on the calendar where it makes sense. And she knows. She knows if it's too many things and then I get overwhelmed and then I just have no energy. So I ultimately say yes to pretty much everything. However, if you're a person and you're putting out all this negative stuff and things like that, like I won't co-sign that. So I say yes to things that I feel that are in alignment with the message of personal transformation and you know what I'm saying? Because it's not just me, it's me and another person. So me and the other person, when we connect, there's an energy that amplifies, that takes on its own deal that goes beyond this that we're doing right now. We can say nothing and somebody's like, oh, the silence, I don't know. It's just something about just watching you guys. It did something to me. That's all energy. So my yes is I still do free stuff. You know, it's like, it always comes back around. I don't wait for it to come back around. However, that yes is an opening. You know, the only time I will say no is when it starts to take up space from all the other things that I'm doing, and I won't compromise. I know that I won't compromise that for no one. So,
you have you always had this much energy? Because I think that also our emotion, the enthusiasm, the excitement, the zest is actually what continues to place our manifestations in motion.
Yep.
And you show up with this profound amount of light, this profound amount of energy, this activation within you, that no matter where you go, I believe that you will have the Midas touch, because the energy and motion, the emotion that you place into everything that you say yes to will continue to bear fruit, whether in the moment or maybe in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But it will continue to come back to the place of origin of what was placed out in the first place, which is essentially the law of karma.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your energy is a byproduct of you saying yes to things that are of your highest excitement and simultaneously aligning yourself with only things that enrich your spirit as opposed to distract or deplete?
I'd say the root of my passion, go back to it again, is honoring that the little Garen. I feel that little Garen is 1,000,000 times more powerful than this adult, this 41-year-old shell. And when I allow him to play, he has energy for days. And most people have given up on their inner child. And the best way I can describe it, there was a young lady that came up to me and she was like, I've got the car and I've got the husband and the kids and I just feel like something is missing. I said, what did you used to love to do when you were a little kid? At what age? When you were 5? I used to love to dance. I was like, when was the last time you danced? 25 years ago. I said, well, let me ask you this. If your little girl came up to you and she was like, Mom, 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 and you ignored her for 25 years, how do you think the relationship would be? She was like, there wouldn't be one. I said, why not? She's like, I don't know. It's just, I said, because there's no emotional closure. That little child needs to have the nutrients of attention and acknowledgement. So if you know what that feels like, let's just say your inner child came to this earth with something that was already inside of her. Typically the things that you naturally gravitated to, dance. So let's just say for the last 25 years, your inner child kept saying, Mom, 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 and you didn't acknowledge her, you ignored her, and what happened? What would happen? The same exact thing as if you ignored a child for 25 years. So there's a separation from your spiritual and your physical. So what is missing? You, because they must be aligned. And if your inner child is connected to the deepest part of your heart, that's what's missing. So I invite you to sign up for a dance class. Don't try to make sense of it. And just once or twice a week and allow yourself to be in that. 2 weeks goes by and it was a completely different human. I forgot that I felt free. And I forgot this. And I forgot this. And all I did was taught her how to remember herself. And so when she honored that, I feel like the inner child is like connected to the spiritual umbilical cord to heaven or to source energy. And when I honor little Garen, when she honored her little inner child, something she's always wanted to do, and she's always, when you get an idea and then you actually acknowledge it and honor it and bring it to life, she will keep bringing ideas, keep bringing creativity, keep bringing energy. So the source in which I operate comes directly from my heart, not from influence outside of me. So I haven't always had that. But when I do, that's where it comes from. Passion is like a full-blown tree. It's like an oak tree. What you loved as a child is the acorn. So if you honor the acorn, plant it, nourish it, proper sunlight, proper water, proper attention, acknowledgement, it's going to grow into the oak tree. Most people are looking for the oak tree and forgot about the acorn. So passion is the byproduct of what you loved. So when you operate and you grow that, that's the stimulus that you run off of.
A huge part of my life's mission feels like an invitation to reactivate the inner child, and something that you actually had us do yesterday, which I thought was a really fun activity. Garen came over for dinner last night and just got to drop in with myself and Andre, and you got us to grab out a piece of paper to write our name in the middle, or to sort of put a square into the middle and then create into different subsections. And to fill out sort of, finances and contribution and family and friends and like different topics.
Yeah.
And then each one we would give it a number of like how between 1 and 10 will be activated within that space, and then to actually look at the circle and see where basically call it the power circle, where is needed for us to send more energy into, so that essentially if you look at a wheel, this is what you shared with us, once you want it to move forward, it gets to be even in all sides, as opposed to one spike up here, but then one at like a 2 and one at an 8. It's going to kind of roll like this. And so essentially, if we want to activate the power within our being, then can we acknowledge that areas where we're actually not sending a lot of energy to, can we start incorporating that back into our everyday life? And something that my spike was fun and adventure. Yeah. And something that I learned recently in traditional shamanism, essentially, if somebody feels like they've lost sense with their purpose or lost touch with their own self, one of the first questions that a shaman will ask is, when was the last time you danced? And the medicine is, can you start incorporating that dance every day for 21 days is the first thing that you do in the morning. And so something that really stuck with me, and that's something so cool, that I have spiked all the way up to an 8 on that specific topic, is that when I wake up in the morning, I like to play, a sort of song that gets me going. And whether I'm naked or I've got my underwear on, I'm sort of flailing myself around the house and dancing with Andre, getting him involved. Now putting him on my Instagram and me swooping and like dancing, and then challenging people on Instagram to
give people freedom.
Tag myself in them dancing. And one song I love to use is "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift, because it's so it's really jivey. And what it does to my serotonin levels to start my day reactivates that inner child, which then leads to this sort of activation of realizing, I just spent the last 2 weeks doing back-end logistics and editing for the podcast, but I'm an artist. Like, I want to create dope art, and I haven't painted in so long. So what that actual activation of dancing in the morning rekindled that eternal child, which then led me to painting this painting.
I didn't know you did that. This is awesome.
In the backyard. And I was covered in paint. I had it everywhere. And I felt alive again. Yeah. I resuscitated myself through just that moment of dancing in the morning. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling a sense of being disconnected, feeling a sense of there's a deeper version of myself that wants to come online. The invitation for you is, instead of thinking about like, well, I want to create this masterpiece of my life and I don't even know where to start, it's actually with the small things. It's that first 20 minutes of the day.
Yeah.
Can you curate a playlist on Spotify or whatever music app that you use, and create a playlist that is irresistible songs that you can't not dance to?
Yeah.
And get that in the first 20 minutes of your day, and set yourself up a 21-day challenge where the first thing that you do is to get out of bed and dance.
Yeah.
Watch your life exponentially
Yeah,
change.
no, I think that's really, really, really awesome, especially because your cortisol levels, which is your fear hormone, is it's its highest when you're the most tired and when you first wake up. So that's why when you wake up, you have that pressure. That's why it's hard for people to wake up early, 5 o'clock in the morning, because it's like, ugh. But through that, if you can push through that, you actually build your willpower, and you build your level of the rate at which you focus. So when you push past that and you immediately go into moving your body, it boosts your serotonin. So that's exactly what you're doing. You know, I also have a thing called Power Hour that I got from Robin Sharman, but he calls it the 5 a.m. club. I call it the Power Hour. You wake up. Well, I wake up at 4:50 a.m. and the first 20 minutes, I move my body. Like, soon as my feet touch the ground, I'll either dance or I'll do some push-ups or something that's moving my body. Boom. Then I go right into 20 minutes of reflection. So reflecting on yesterday, what I'm going to do today, doing my I ams, whatever it is for 20 minutes. And then I go right into 20 minutes of growing my mind. So if I'm working on a project, I was like, what is one thing I can learn about whatever that is? 30 days, I've learned 30 new things. Most people don't learn at that rate. We did when we were kids, but when you're intentionally doing this the first thing in the morning, you'll open your life wide up. And so that's what I do. It's called the 20-20-20 formula. But I understand why in those 21-day challenges, why those things happen. It's because you're moving your body and you're not like, oh, let me get this phone and emails. Let me just check on the election and you'll take yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that. The contrast of my joy of how I feel when I am starting my day with this dance, or
look at your smile. You can tell.
Go right into it. Or, which I've also done the other side of it, which is my curiosity of wanting to dive deep into the realm of child sex trafficking on the planet and like go right into that frequency. And I think that there's a powerful sort of balance with that of like, also, I mean, there's a whole topic in itself, but just being really mindful that what we expose our energy to, we absorb like a sponge. And something that I've experienced actually sitting with ayahuasca is ayahuasca will amplify anything that's already in the space. My experience of ayahuasca is that ayahuasca will not bring anything that's not already in the field. It will just amplify what is already there. And actually what the medicine does for me is that whatever I've exposed myself to almost over a week before I sit with her will be brought into my field. So if I sit and go deep into conspiracy theories and I'm like, Andre's asleep in bed and I'm like, knee deep in Hillary Clinton's deleted emails on WikiLeaks, and I'm like, like in it. And then a week later, I go and sit with the medicine. The medicine will present that and be like, look what you're exposing your consciousness to, and look how it's playing in the background of your consciousness, so that you want to know where your joy is. Where are you spending the currency of your energy? Yeah. Yeah. And so I think for me personally, the training right now is to not be naive to what's actually happening on the planet. I am very scorpionic by nature. I want to go into behind the other veil, into the depth of humanity, to the core wound, and simultaneously bring light into it. And yet the training is, what am I doing on a daily basis to reactivate my joy, be in the Jedi training of being strong enough mentally, physically, sexually, financially, multidimensionally, on all planes of existence, so that I can go into the depth and not be consumed by the
most
darkness.
Powerful version of you. So you just get to ask, which version of myself am I taking here? The one where I give 10% to myself, or the one where I'm overflowing with so much just joy and resilience that everything is bouncing off me that normally takes me down. And that's why I tell people, your first hour in the day, don't give it to anyone else. Like, I have a wife. I kiss her, and then I go do my 5 a.m. thing. Because if I don't, I'll be giving her 80% of me for the rest of the day. And I don't want to cheat my wife. So I've got to give to myself. It's so important, especially for everything that I do is not for the now. It's for staying power. It's long term. Anybody can be successful. How long can you keep it? Well, you've got to be thinking long term. So if I want to stay at this level, I've got to build the practice so strong. It's kind of like a car. You don't just get in it and drive. You got to get in it, start the engine. It takes 10 times the velocity. Then it settles into the actual flow of the engine. Then you drive. So why would somebody do different with their own spiritual engine? When you turn your engine on, you turn it with the best fuel. You know, you put the best fuel in there and you got that hour. Now everybody's benefiting from your overflow. And not, you know, lesser of yourself. And then you got to pull. And then now you're on the defensive of the day. But when you're ahead of the day because you're so everything, you know, I heard somebody say, it's like this monk, he said, you know, true strength is not when you go into a cave and hide and you're silent. It's when you're amongst the chaos and you choose peace. Well, the only way you can actually do that is if you're strong enough to do that, when you really have the mind to do that. So when you honor yourself that much, that's my wife. I can't give her my scraps. So I've got to give her the best of me. And I know I'll wake up and then her little leg will come wrap me and then her arm. And I just want to stay in there. And at the end, then 1 day and then 2 days and then 3 days. And I'm wondering why this weird stuff is happening. I'm like, oh, I'm on the defensive again. I've got to start my engine the most powerful. Therefore, everything else will get the best version of me. Yeah. And it is... I can't compromise with that.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful place to bring this full circle.
Yeah.
With this podcast. But before we sort of close out, Garen, I have a request.
What for you? Yeah.
Ever since you in this podcast mentioned that an inmate said that they feel free whenever you sing.
Yeah.
I'm super curious.
Let me sing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll sing.
Yeah.
La 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 la. My chérie amour, lovely as a summer day. My chérie amour, distant as a Milky Way. My chérie amour, pretty little one that I adore. You're the only one my heart beats for. How I wish that you were mine.
Yes! Oh my gosh, I can totally understand why they said they felt free. In a place with grey walls and metal bars, and your song and your voice comes out, and that frequency is filling the space. Let's go. Let's go.
Listen, I received that.
Oh, yeah.
I received this acknowledgement. Little Garen is just happy. He's like, thank you for the compliments. Thank you for the compliments. Yes.
Aww.
Thank you.
And I just really love your willingness to just show up for life. Where most people are like, oh, I don't want to sing. Oh, don't put me on the spot. You're like, let's go. Let's go.
It's the mission.
It's an attitude.
It's definitely, I'm so clear on my mission and anything that's connected to it. It's what I asked for. Give me any platform. So if it comes through music and somebody was like, there's something about it that just changed.
Yeah.
Thank you, because that's feedback for me.
Thank you so much for showing up for life. Not only did you show up for Deja Blu once, but you showed up for Deja Blu twice.
Yeah.
You don't even live in LA anymore. You live in Austin, Texas, and you are still back here showing up for second round, not giving up on Deja Blu, saying yes to life, aligning yourself with your Dharma, being very clear on your mission, and sharing yourself freely with the world from a place of love and alignment. You are a true blessing to this earth. I am grateful to be your friend, to be your co-creator, and to be able to witness your light and to continue to be able to utilize my platform to share your message in a good way. I'm so grateful for you being here today, Garen.
I'm taking that all in.
Right in that little heart pocket.
And thank you so much for the acknowledgement and for creating a space like this where stories like mine have wings. Because without your willingness to answer the calling, there is the light doesn't get to be seen. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I love you, brother.
Love you too.
Oh, alrighty. So
Did we do it?
Yes.
Did it.
So all of you beautiful Blu Birds, thank you so much for tuning in with today's podcast with Garrain Jones. So grateful for you to be here and to be able to receive the magic and the gifts of this incredible brother. And to all of you beautiful beings at home, may you receive the medicine that we share these stories with the intention to activate your own truest purpose within, because you have something very, very unique that nobody else can do, and it is found in the stillness of listening to your own heart. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, may you feel seen and heard and loved and held, and so grateful for you to be on this Deja Blu journey with us. And until next time, sending you so much love. Bless, bless.
Peace.